Welcome to this week's edition of Mississippi Happenings Podcast. My name is David Oles, and here with me is my co-host, Jim Newman. Hello, Jim.
Hello, David.
Good to see you.
It's always better to be seen than viewed.
Absolutely. Seen than viewed. Interesting. I like that. This week, we want to continue our discussion about the issues and concerns facing all Mississippians. Our guest today is former Democratic Governor Ronnie Musgrove. Governor Musgrove grew up in Sardis, Mississippi, the northern part of the state. He attended Northwest Mississippi Community College in Senatobia, graduated from Ole Miss, and received his law degree from the University of Mississippi School of Law. He began his political career as a state senator, District 10, representing Tate and Panola counties. During that time, he was appointed vice chair of the Senate's University and College Committee and made a member of the Education Committee. In 1996, he was elected lieutenant governor. During this time, he named several African-American senators to chair several Senate committees, including Judiciary, Constitution, Elections, and University and College. As governor, he launched the AMI program, which is the Advantage Mississippi Initiative, to create new jobs for the state, and brought Nissan to the Jackson area, which is still considered, this initiative is still considered to be the largest economic development project in Mississippi history. It also led the way for Toyota to come to Blue Springs. Governor Musgrove, it is an honor and a pleasure to have you with us today. We admire your dedication and commitment to the underserved and to all Mississippi's. Thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate being with you. Only one correction that I would point out in your introduction. I was born in Sardis, but was actually raised in Batesville. So my friends at South Panola would not be appreciative if I didn't recognize that I am a graduate of the University of South Panola.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. Yes. In 1996, yes, you were elected lieutenant governor. I want to start a discussion today about with public education. During your tenure, you were noted as an education governor. In July of 2001, you signed a bill that implemented the largest pay increase for teachers and basically elevating it to the salary range of the Southeastern Advantage. And you also were very implemental with the Mississippi Adequate Education Program. So please share your thoughts with us about public education.
Well, to me, the difference maker for any community in any state is their level of public education. In order to have a workforce that functions, that's attractive, that can get the job done, you have to have very good public schools. And to me, a career starts through the schoolhouse doors and through education. Unfortunately, Mississippi is the only state in the nation right now that does not have pre-K provided by the state. And I believe that is a real drawback because so much is dependent on early childhood development. There have been too many studies that would show that. So my feeling all along was that the better that our public schools could be, the better that our economic opportunity could be in the state. So I took it upon myself to do two or three things. Number one, you want to have the best teachers possible in the classroom. And there is no secret to the fact that if the better you pay a person in a particular field, the more people you're going to attract at a better level. So it always made sense to me to make the pay as high as possible. It always is strange to me that people will complain about paying a teacher $50,000 a year, and that they only work 9 months, and yet we'll pay a football player $100 million for 16 games. It's just amazing to me that we can't make a distinction between what's important in the welfare of our state and our country, for that matter. So to me, teacher pay was important, benefits were important. When I was elected in 1988 to the Senate, or was sworn in 88, the starting salary for teachers in Mississippi was $13,500, no health care benefits. Now, that's not the dark ages. I recognize I'm gray-headed. I recognize I'm old, but that's just not the dark ages. And so we've come a long way. I authored the bill to have health insurance, and then that teacher pay raise was important. Also, I felt like that technology and computers in the classroom were extremely important. So we were the first state in the nation to put internet accessible computers in every classroom. A lot of people don't realize that, but when you look back at it, there's a lot that we still need to do because of connectivity in the Delta and in other rural parts of our state. But I thought that was important. The last thing that I would say about the MAEP Act, which is the Mississippi Adequate Education Program, it is that if you looked at the school districts at the time and you looked at the local tax base, the state provides so much funding for essential programs. And then if you've got a tax base that's over and above that, then you can add additional classes for students. And I use the example of Noxubee County. Let's just say that Noxubee County had the best teachers in America. And you had Tupelo that likewise had the best teachers in America. Noxubee County could offer only 74 types of classes because of their local ad valorem taxes. Tupelo, on the other hand, offered 140. So right off the bat, even with the best teachers in the country, Tupelo would be getting a far superior educated student than Noxubee could provide just by the course offerings. And so that's why I thought that the property poor districts needed the additional help from the state to be able to provide at least what we would call the substantial minimum of a quality education.
Gotcha. One of the things that we're hearing a lot about today is the school vouchers, school choice. We had a good conversation with Jack Reed Jr. About the desegregation process in Mississippi. And it appears the same things that was said in the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s about school vouchers, school choice, is what we're hearing about today. What are your thoughts about that with school choice?
Well, one of the things that you wanted to do with schools is to raise the accountability for everyone and then be able to provide the funding necessary to get those done. Then if a school doesn't do that, then you know it's not money, it is the leadership, it's the teachers, and it's everyone else. But when you don't have sufficient money, you can always use the excuse or always say, we can't provide as good an education unless we've got sufficient money. But when you allow students to take vouchers away from schools and only go to the school of their choice, then you've done two things. Number one, if you don't provide transportation with that, then you've only allowed the student who can afford transportation to go to another school. And then when you allow that child to leave with that school voucher, you have lost a good student in that district that always can provide some help to the district. So I believe that it doesn't accomplish what needs to be accomplished, because a school can always say, we can't take but 10 students, and they get to selectively choose which students, and the others can't go. And I just feel like that the focus needs to be on improving schools, not having children go to different schools all across the state.
Gotcha. What is your thoughts on Mississippi losing $137 million due to the Department of Education? And having said that, I do want to share that I was very pleased with the letter that I think was Philip Birchfield or maybe Lance Evans wrote to Linda McMahon. What's your thoughts about losing $137 million in funding for schools?
Devastating to Mississippi, devastating to our schools and to our students. There's so many things that our schools provide, that our government provides, that unless we're a part of it, we don't think about the importance. For instance, there are so many families with special needs children. If you don't have a special needs child, you forget how important it is for the school to be able to provide the special needs things for children. If a child gets sick at school, 50 of our school nurses were paid for out of that money. Those school nurses are going to be lost. All of those things make up for a better quality education that we're going to lose and not have. And that's just not good for our schools, and it's not good for our children. And when you keep taking away dollar after dollar after dollar from our schools, then what you're going to have is you're going to have a shell of a school system that can't provide the education that our children need.
Yeah, it's education is so very important. Governor, back when you were governor, President Bush signed in the No Child Left Behind Act. And Mississippi was already behind. Have we caught up any? Like you said, we don't have kindergarten. So I know Kathy Grace has worked long and many hours, as you have, trying to get the legislature to come up with the funds for kindergarten, and the numbers are there that show we need it. But whatever happened to No Child Left Behind? It seems like we're leaving a lot of them behind these days.
Kathy Grace is a great warrior for better schools, for better opportunities for children. Her and my late wife chaired the early childhood school at the University of Mississippi and did a lot of good work together. That's one of the reasons that I know that early childhood education is so important. President Bush had the right idea when he focused on education. However, the implementation was left up to the states in so many areas. In the time where I was in office, we improved substantially from some of our rankings and ratings, that instead of being 48th, 49th, and 50th, we were in the 30s, or we were in the 20s in several. And in fact, in accountability, we were number 11th in the country on improved accountability. So a lot of good things were happening, but education is not something you can snap your finger with or accomplish overnight. It is a steady investment of effort and time and dollars into helping your children become what they need to become at the time. For instance, Jim, I'm sure I'm saying this because I feel sure you're the oldest one on this broadcast or podcast, but
Yes,
I'm just guessing that. But I remember when my mom and dad would talk about in 1952 when they were working, 75% of people who worked in Mississippi did not have to have more than a high school education to get a good job. But you all know that times change, things change, technology changes, and therefore our education opportunities have to change as well. And so instead of changing, improving, and making ourselves more adaptable to our work world over the last couple of decades, we probably have stayed more stagnant than improving in the areas where we needed to improve. Now, we've had some improvements in some areas, but some of those improvements were just to catch up where the average state has been in the rest of the country. So we need to have a constant improvement and investment in our schools. And unless that happens, we will continue to fall further and further behind. And let me say this on two particular personal notes. I mentioned special needs a minute ago. I have a grandson with special needs, and that grandson is in North Carolina. And my children tell me that what is provided in North Carolina is so much more than what we provide here. If you've got a child with special needs, that's something that you consider. That's something that you think about. People without special needs may not think about those areas. But if you don't think that there are a lot of people with children with special needs, just look around and you'll probably find one in your own family somewhere, or if not multiple. So that's one thing that's very important to me. And I think that it's important to note that, and the investment just cannot be overstated about what we need to do to help opportunity for our children.
I don't quite know how to say it. It seems to me like Mississippi has, at least northern Mississippi, I'm not that familiar with the southern portion, but the northern part of Mississippi, Golden Triangle area, north, has certainly been a place for industry to locate and manufacture. And it seems to me that manufacturing is just not where we want to be. But I'm not sure what the alternative is that we should be looking at.
To me, one of the things that was important was to attract an automobile company or manufacturing along those lines, because I felt like it provided a much better opportunity, a much better wage, and a much better future. But our economic development strategy was so far behind, we could not even be competitive. Jimmy Heidel, who was the former director of our economic development effort in Mississippi, said that for 8 years he had been trying to get in the front door to meet with car manufacturers across the world to consider coming here. And because of our structure, we never could get in the front door. So that was the first thing that I did as governor, is that we called a special session to revamp our economic development strategy to provide the kinds of incentives that would bring the kind of jobs today into the state. And within 90 days, we located Nissan into our state, which has accounted for over 30,000 jobs in Mississippi. And I might say in North Mississippi, there were people from all 82 counties working at Nissan in Canton, Mississippi. So it does say it had an economic impact for everyone. But Jim, what we have to do is there's always, what are we doing now? What's the transition area for new jobs? And what's the future? The future definitely looks like to me that it's going to involve technology in some shape, form, or fashion. So to me, we need to make sure that we're training and educating people in the world of technology. That's why I was so big on, after listening to Bob Pittman, who has done such a great job in terms of business and industry across the country, that he said, this was 30 years ago, he said, there's going to come a time where there won't be any textbooks, there won't be any workbooks, it'll all be on a computer on a desk. Well,
So true.
it was hard for me to even imagine that, but I bought into it. And now as I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about how much my grandchildren have to school me on technological advances and all, now I don't feel like I'm much different from a lot of other people. I
Boy,
realize that technology is something that while it may create some problems, it also creates a world of opportunity. So we have to be consistent with what the market is going to bear or to bring to us, and we've got to be competitive in that arena.
I've always wondered, right down the road from Tupelo, not too many miles, is a school that every year puts out an electric car that goes all over the place, wins national championships, wins national competitions, and everything else. And
Wins international contest.
yes, and why is it we cannot persuade some companies that Mississippi is ready for their technology?
Well, every company that looks at locating looks at the metrics of the results of the schools in Mississippi. And here's one of the things that if you just take North Mississippi as an example, and I know where that school is that you're talking about, but let's say what it appears to be the result right now is that we have 6 or 8 communities that are great communities that are funded well, they have good local ad valorem taxes, but you can't just fund those areas for schools and education and think that you're going to help the economic welfare of the rest of the state. For instance, when you don't adequately fund education, towns like Amory, towns like Baldwin, Boonville, Corinth, and the list just goes on and on and on. They don't get adequately funded because those local areas do not have the tax base that, say, a Tupelo has, that a South Haven has, that a Madison has. And so consequently, that's why the Mississippi Adequate Education Program is so important, to make sure that every community can provide quality educated people that companies look to and say, this is what we need. And so that's why I think it's so important that we invest across the board for our state so that we have a vibrant state, not just a few vibrant communities.
Jim and
You
I were
ran,
looking at the counties that were losing the $137 million. DeSoto County, where I live, lost zero, but the counties that you just mentioned, they were hit the hardest. Jim?
yes, they were. Uh, I forgot what I was going to. Oh, you were elected as a senator. You were lieutenant governor. You were governor. Uh, you ran against Roger Wicker. I mean, you know how to run campaigns. How do we elect people that think like you do about education? It's very discouraging to me, anyway. And it's got to be a joke around the country to hear that the Mississippi legislature has a bill creating, what was it, David? Vigilantes? The Vigilante
Yes.
Committee, or
That for to there was a bounty hunter. Are you talking
the
about the
bounty
bounty
hunter
hunter
law.
for
Yeah.
immigrants?
That, I mean, what does it take to get people's attention to bring about this change?
I think it's at least 2 things, Jim. One, parents have got to demand that their children be educated.
Is it demand their children or everybody's children?
Well, if all parents demanded that their children, then you would catch all of the children.
Okay.
So I say that in a pluralistic kind of way, but demand that our children be educated, all of our children. Secondly, if you look at the numbers of our people, especially young people who are leaving the state, it is staggering. We're one of only 2 states in the country that over the last several years, we've actually lost population. And it's mainly through young people because they don't see opportunity here. And until our leadership in the state and in the legislature make the connection that good schools and good education equals good job opportunities and better economic growth, then it's hard for the state to have that. And I remember when several parents have looked at me in complete disgust and said, Musgrove, my child is moving to Austin, Texas. My child is moving to Nashville, Tennessee. My child is moving to Little Rock. And the list goes on and on. And yet we want our young people to stay here in our state, make our state a better place. But unless we have leadership that actually puts that position forward and fights for education and making education a priority, it just won't happen.
Well, you mentioned something that caught my attention, and I've thought about it over the past several years. The state puts out incentives for companies to move into the state. Why do they never require those companies to hire the top graduating students in the particular fields that this company happens to operate, to make it a requirement for that money?
Okay.
I mean, it would be a top salary, it'd be a great job, and we would keep some of this talent.
2 things I might add, Jim, to your question in connection. One, when we recruited Nissan here, we had never had an automobile manufacturer. And so I looked at Carlos Ghosn and the leadership of Nissan and said, I know you're going to have to bring people in because we don't have any leadership in automotive technology. What percent of the 5,800 direct employees will you need to bring in from outside? And he said about 3%. So in our memorandum of agreement, Nissan is required to hire 97% of its employees from Mississippi. I'm not sure that has been done in any other scenario.
Congratulations on that. Thank you.
We were, I know it's not in the Toyota facility in Blue Springs. But secondly, one of the reasons that we won out, particularly over Alabama, is that Mississippi State was producing more and better engineers that were needed by Nissan than they said that the counterparts in Alabama were providing. As an Ole Miss graduate, I've never been more proud of Mississippi State than that day when they told me that. And I felt like that was really important. And so it goes to show you, I mean, on a microeconomic level, that those things are important to companies looking at your state. So if we don't invest in our K through 12 schools and our pre-K through 12 and in our universities, then we're losing part of the economic incentive and production that companies look at. And to me, that's really, really important. And there are things you can require companies to do. And we were able to accommodate and require certain things that I thought made a difference for Mississippi and for Nissan.
Let's talk about healthcare for just a second. And I'm looking at one of your quotes. And this is the last sentence. One of the most important we're talking about things that companies look for when coming to a state. And you said one of the most important is a strong and sound healthcare system in the communities where employees will work and live. Let's talk a little bit about healthcare. We have an expanded Medicaid, and I'm quoting you again. Hope you don't mind. The other thing you said,
Can't run from it.
that's okay. I love this. And we're talking about expanded Medicaid by accepting federal funds for healthcare. And you said Mississippi participates in federal matching programs for everything from preserving the post-Civil War home of Jefferson Davis to beaver control. But we won't do it for healthcare?
Well, we do it for health care, just not to the greatest extent that you could do so. Mississippi, in the regular delivery of Medicaid, gets a 3-to-1 match, and I think we're the only state in the nation that gets that match.
Yep.
But also, the highest percent of our National Guard budget is from the federal side, or the highest percent of our transportation and highway dollars from the federal side. And you can go on and on and on about every area that we have. So all of a sudden, to take the position that, one part of healthcare is not good enough, it doesn't make any sense. Right now, unfortunately, Congress is considering a bill that could reduce Medicaid dollars by $880 billion. And a lot of people, I think, lose sight of what the expansion of health care via Medicaid would actually do. People who don't have employment, who cannot do anything else, who are extremely poor, are already on Medicaid. What the expansion of Medicaid would have done is it would have allowed people that worked at the AutoZone, at the Kroger, at the cleaners, and you just keep going on and on about all of your businesses where they don't provide health care, and the people working there can't afford the premiums for health care. And so what is happening now is that the hospitals and the clinics through the emergency rooms are having to eat that cost because they can't pay, and there is no payer via Medicaid to help the hospitals sustain. That's why Mississippi has the highest percentage of hospitals that are almost at closure than any other state in the nation. And so that's why it doesn't make any sense to me for us not to expand health care via Medicaid. It's the lowest cost, produce the highest number of jobs, and would provide health care to people all across our state. I would really, really like to see our leadership in our state to provide Medicaid expansion. But I will tell you this much. If Congress is successful at reducing Medicaid by $800+ billion, the states that will be most affected negatively will be southern states. It will be states that have higher percentage of socioeconomic disadvantaged people. And in Mississippi, a lot of people do not realize that the greatest single share of Medicaid dollars are spent on nursing home people. So, and you're talking about, and then if you want to look even further at our racial makeup in our state, the highest percentage of people in our nursing home happen to be white people. And so you start looking at all of the things why you ought to be supportive of helping everyone, our minority, our white, all citizens of Mississippi need health care. And if we're going to cut back on health care and cut back on the reimbursement, you're going to reduce the number of hospitals you have, you're going to reduce the number of providers, the doctors and nurses, and then you're going to reduce the number of nursing homes that you have as well. None of those bode well for the future of the state.
Well, we have a 600 bed hospital here in Tupelo, but only roughly 300 beds are in use. So there you go.
Jim, one of the things we could,
go ahead.
no, I was going to say, one of the things we could do to help with our healthcare delivery is to really upgrade our entire system of healthcare delivery. One of my good friends just had hip replacement surgery yesterday morning. Now, 30 or 40 years ago, when that happened, a person spent 3 to 5 days in a hospital. Yesterday morning, though, he did like almost every other person who has had surgery. He went in at 5 o'clock, had the surgery at 6 o'clock, was on his way home by 10 o'clock, a grand total of about 4 hours. So the hospital beds are not needed anymore like they used to be needed. So we need to develop with the CON law a different way to use the license for other purposes of healthcare delivery, not just overnight hospital stays.
Very true. We've tried to get Mr. Robert Robertson with the Hospital Association, and so far we haven't been successful, but we're going to continue to try.
I'll encourage Richard to join you.
We'd love to talk to him. One of the things and I don't know whether you heard this morning or not, but Ted Cruz and another senator were on. They were talking about a new program that Senator Cruz says is going well in the House. And to me, it kind of sounds like a good plan on the front end. And I've only had a few hours to think about it, but roughly the program is every child born in America will receive a $1,000 in an account. And businesses and parents, grandparents can contribute to that up through the age of 18. And at age 18, they have two choices. They can take half of it to start up business, or they can take all of it to go to college. But what Cruz says it does is it creates capitalists, not socialists, because they are invested in the economy. It sounds good on the front end, but I'm just really suspicious of anything. And he was asked if it would have any effect on Social Security, and he said, no, that's entirely separate. That by the age of 35, you would have a child that was born pretty close to being a millionaire. And then when he got to be 65, he would, because of the compounding interest, etc. Does that sound like any kind of a plan to get kids involved?
Yes, the numbers are a little inflated, but if Senator Cruz could get that passed, I would be celebrating with him. I just wish I could have gotten my Republican colleagues to support that idea when I was in office. The foremost person in the country that advocated that program was a professor at Washington in St. Louis. I went up and visited with him and spent a day with him to try to develop that program, because there's so many children that are in poverty or that are close to poverty that it would be a savings account that their parents never could give them. Out of all the monies we spend as a government on children and or people who do need help, this is one of the best investments that you could have. And we developed white papers on this subject, so that I won't claim to be an extensive expert at it, but I can assure you I knew a good bit about it at the time we were working with it, that I believe it would be an excellent opportunity for children all across the country.
Senator Cruz talks like it has a good chance of passing in the House. He said he didn't know. He
Well,
hadn't
every
done his
time I hear
numbers.
that, though, I get cautious because then I don't think the percentages are as high as I would like them to be. Uh, but maybe he can be the exception.
You mentioned Washington University. I just might mention, you probably don't know her, but her name is Virginia Tolliver. She used to be the librarian at Washington University. And we are having a podcast with her on Thursday afternoon. And I was talking to her, and she said, well, what are we going to talk about? And I said, well, we're going to talk about your upbringing. And she said, well, I never went to a school that wasn't all black. And I said, well, that's what we're going to talk about. Did you have as good of teachers? Did you have new school books? What was it like? Because you have the stories that are going to be forgotten unless we can record them. So it was interesting that you mentioned Washington University.
Well, Washington University is an outstanding university with a great academic background. But one of the things I was trying to say a minute ago is that today we have allowed race to get so polarizing that it's not just under the table, it's above the table. It is brazen in the way that things happen. This assault on DEI has been one of the most dumbfounding things that I've seen pushed and to a successful level, unfortunately, that I've seen. But when you've got a state that is not a homogeneous state, and Mississippi is one, and most all of our states are that way, then the policies and programs and things you need them to be beneficial to everyone, not just a certain segment of society. And a lot of people don't even realize who are the real recipients and beneficiaries of a lot of the programs that we have. And that's what I was trying to say.
And one of the things about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it also affects people with disabilities. It negatively affects children and adults with disabilities. But that's something you don't hear about, in the news and in the media.
Go ahead, Governor.
No, I was just going to say that when we can if we could ever get to the point that we could put aside what a person looks like or who they are and recognize that all people have significant quality and contributions, and everybody is entitled to the benefits that are offered by our federal constitution and our state constitution. And if we could look at programs that way, then we would remove a lot of the headaches that all of us have to deal with so much of the time.
I'll give you an amen to that.
That's all David and I can do. We're so incapacitated that we have this program in an attempt to get people like you out there to help educate people on what's going on and what happened and why it happened and what needs to happen. So really appreciate all the work that you've done. You care to make any comment or not about it? And if you don't, that's fine. Whatever happened to that beef program, that beef plant that failed? Or what was that?
What it was, I think two of our representatives, one was Billy McCoy, who at that time he was not Speaker of the House, but he was chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, I believe.
Yes.
And Representative Tommy Reynolds from Charleston, who had Oakland in his district, had gotten together with our Commissioner of Agriculture, and it seemed like that they were all Mississippi State connected and had an agricultural background, and that the cull cows were a big proposition at the time. So that was a bill that they put together, that they passed, that it passed 174 to nothing. I signed it, was a good economic opportunity. Well, as it turned out, it went belly up, and I think the state at the time had lost $35 million as a result of that happening. But I might tell you that the state retained the ownership of the facilities. The state repurposed it and recruited another industry in. And I might tell you that every penny of the debt that was owed has been paid off. So the state has been made 100% whole. Versus solar projects and all that are in Horn Lake, that are in Columbus, that are in other areas, that I think that I am not exaggerating when I say that there's at least $150 to $200 million that the state has written off, that we don't own the facilities anymore, and there's no way to recoup the money that was lost on those subsequent projects after I left.
Jeez.
I didn't know. I'm still trying to figure out. It was cull cattle.
Cull cattle is a term
What's
that I
a
didn't
cull
grow up
cattle?
with, and I didn't know anything about. So I left it up to the Commissioner of Agriculture, Billy McCoy, and them to try to figure it out. And obviously, it was not as good a deal as it should have been.
Well,
But we
you
can,
know,
but,
if you don't try, you never know.
Well,
but,
this is true.
but the state got its
That's
money back. That's it. With a few minutes left, do we want to talk about the state income tax elimination?
Yes.
What's your thoughts on that, Governor?
What you always want to do is you want to try to get the right balance or mix between income for the state and what the state does. A lot of times people just forget about the fact that we all need government at some point in time. What is scary to me is now you have the administration in Washington talking about doing away with FEMA. Now, if you are a Mississippian and you have any age on you at all you have to do is go back a few years and think about all of the hurricanes that we've had. Katrina being possibly the worst, Camille being the worst in terms of deaths. And if we had not had federal help with those, I wonder what our state would look like. And that is a part of government that we need. I don't know how the state would be able to make up the difference between what FEMA would do. All right. So if you want to have a goal for the state to have a certain education quality, a certain healthcare quality, a certain job opportunity quality of life living, then there's a certain amount of dollars that it's going to take to do that. You can get that money from taxes, or you can get it from economic opportunity or activity that is a result of tax benefits. The smart people that I have seen cut taxes always did so in an effort to improve economic opportunity. President Clinton is one of the people that I might point to, that when they passed the significant bill, I think it was in 2004, maybe, yes, or 2006, with some welfare reform opportunities, some tax cuts, some very targeted tax cuts, and you look at what it produced, President Clinton is the only one in modern times that actually reduced our national debt from about $6.5 trillion to $4.9 trillion, or we'll say 5. Just think about what $5 trillion would look like today instead of $36 trillion that we have as national debt. But the tax cuts were targeted. I am hard pressed to think that just the clear and sheer elimination of the income tax, which for most people the highest is 4% in Mississippi, would offset or produce enough economic opportunity. I've not seen anybody, including our state economist, our state fiscal officer, or any other economist, that can show where that cut would in fact produce that kind of economic activity that would refill our state coffers, so to speak, so that it would be an even swap, so to speak, in terms of dollars and cents.
Well, at one point in your tenure as governor, I believe you said, or it was reported, that 62% of the state budget went to education. Well, if we eliminate the income tax, that 62% is gone.
It is not 62% today. I can tell you, with Ole Miss as a resident of Oxford, and I think this is also true for Mississippi State and the rest of the universities. When I was in the state legislature, we funded universities, and I know at Ole Miss particularly, at over 60%. Now, the exact percent, I don't remember. But today, Ole Miss receives about 12 to 15% of its funding from the state, and not 60%. And people wonder why the tuition has gone up so much, because that's one of the major ways they have of offsetting the loss of state dollars. So there is always a cost if you're cutting the dollars that are going to the state with what you can do with them. And the programs like education and others will see it. If you don't offset that with economic activity to bring in additional dollars. And I just haven't seen that up until this point.
Well, we're getting a little late into the show, but let me just ask you, in your spare time, what projects are you working on now? What are you thinking about needs to be done, and what are you working on?
Well, we're working to try to keep some rural hospitals open, which is a tough job. I can tell you that right now. Also, I'm working on giving all of my papers from all of my time in office to the University of Mississippi Archive. And so I'm in the process of going through all of those papers and looking at so many of the things that we did. That reminds me of I think, some really, really good projects and programs that I think that we need to reconsider. Also, I'm working on a couple of books that I believe would help us to reconsider the things that I think are important for us to have as a state. I'm kind of like the librarian at Washington University. My mother went to the 10th grade in school, and my dad, I think, made it to the 8th grade in school. No reflection on their intellectual ability, because they were very smart people. And when my mother's favorite author was William Faulkner, and she had read every book that William Faulkner had ever written, I realized how much smarter she was than I was, because I struggle to understand William Faulkner, and I'm right here in the seat of William Faulkner's hometown, and I understand that. But what it does say is, it says for me that I recognized early on at their encouragement that getting a good education was so important to what I wanted to do in life. And had I not listened to them, and had I not bought into the idea that school was my best opportunity, I can assure you, you would not be talking to me today. And I feel so fortunate that I did. And I think that what has happened, now that we've gotten third and fourth and fifth generation, college graduates that are now in office, you forget about what's important and how you got there, because you think to yourself, oh, my children will be perfectly fine. Well, they don't need any extra help. But we all need help at some point in time. Like I said, we all need government at some point in time in order to get by. And to me, I mean, it's just like right now. If you don't think you need government, then don't get on an airplane today. If you don't think you need government, don't get on a highway today. And part of what we're doing, Jim, is that we're so short-sighted on the big things that our country needs. Like the secretary of the FAA is saying that all of our radar equipment is so old that we can't use it. Where are we in a bipartisan way, everyone saying we need to fix this? We need to invest the amount of money that it takes to make sure that we make the skies safe and the airport safe, and that the people flying, which are millions of Americans from all walks of life. Those are the things that we need to focus on, and I think that we're being short-sighted in not focusing on them.
Right. The FAA has never been really overseen and funded as well as it should have been. My background's in aviation, and it's long overdue. It's not Trump. It's not our previous president. It's not. It goes back for years. We've just been living with what we've got.
It's a bipartisan issue to invest in the country in those things that really do matter, and that's one of them that do. Cybersecurity is another. Like I said, you just go on and on at the things that are really not controversial in terms of what we need. It's just having the will to do it.
How do we manage to make potholes and aviation and hospitals and all these? How do we manage to make those political? It has always puzzled me.
They have to work hard at making it political, but they do. No, it's just like everything else. If you're not trying to work together, and I'm still the optimistic person who believes we can work together. And it's so bothersome to watch in Washington now. Nobody's reaching out to the other side. We're going this alone, and that's just not the way to govern. We need the benefit of different thinkers and people who believe in our country and can move our country forward. And I guess that if it's politically advantageous for one party over another to make a hospital the enemy, or to make a school the enemy, or to make an aviation tower at a certain city the enemy, I guess they do it.
It's sad.
Shame on them. Shame on them.
It's sad that they have such small brains. It is. It's been wonderful talking to you, Governor.
It's been a pleasure to talk with you all.
Good. We do appreciate your Governor, any last thoughts for us? Anything that you want our subscribers to hear, or any last words from you?
Just simply say that you all are in North Mississippi, but you could just as easily be in South Mississippi in two locations that are very similar to where you are right now. And our state is not made up of 6 or 8 communities. It's made up of 82 counties, of a lot of good towns and cities across the state, that I believe when we work together and try to make the entire state a better community and better place to live, then the whole state sees those results.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Governor. And I hope you spread the word that we're not bad guys. We're not out to do hatchet jobs on anybody.
What did you call us?
I do hope that you get people from across the board. I have such good friends across the board that we still work together, and I'm so grateful that we can work together. And I just wish that we would do it on a larger macro scale.
If you have any
Jim, what did you
suggestions-
call us? Incapacitated or something? What was that? earlier. Incapacitated. Jeez.
I didn't buy that word when he said it, but I thought I knew what he meant.
Well, Jim, what about you? What you got? Last word.
Gosh, Governor, if you've got some friends across the aisle, we'd love to talk with them. If you could, if you felt free enough to put in a word for us, we'd appreciate it.
Sure, I'll be glad to do something.
Thank you.
David?
We do want to thank our sponsors. We do want to thank our subscribers. We do continue. We appreciate your continued support. Please share this link to all of your friends and all on your social media. And I have one last quote, Governor. I've got one last quote.
He's
and
been
this is
saving this. I can tell.
I have. I've moved it around in the script, but this is perfect to end in this. And you said, if you are fortunate in life, age, and knowledge, breed compassion. And that's the thing that we are missing now in Mississippi, and we're missing it across the nation. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
Enjoyed it. Y'all take
Thank you
care. Thank you.
Very much. Have a good week, Governor.
Thank you. Same to you.
Okay.